My name is Brantley Wester, and I have been working in the accounting field since 1993. And I got my CPA. I received my CPA in 1999. Um, so I had been working in accounting a few years before I had taken the exam and passed the exam, and and was able to actually get my CPA certificate so that I could practice as a CPA.
And what is
A CPA is a certified public accountant, so it gives you credentials to be an expert in the accounting field, which doesn't mean you know everything about accounting, but it means that you are a problem solver and you use critical thinking to solve problems um, when it comes to accounting. Why I decided to be an accountant, when I was getting ready to go to college, I was down to either being an architect or being an accountant. So um, my decision was when I went to Georgia Tech, was that's where I was going to go to school for architecture. When I went there, the people that I met seemed to have no common sense. So I'm a person who believes that you can be very smart, but if you don't have common sense, sometimes it's hard for people to relate to you. So I felt that going to Georgia Tech, I would not be able to relate to the people around me so well. So I decided that I would just go here at Waycross College for 2 years. Well, it's South Georgia State now, but back then it was Waycross College. We called it Quarter Z University, actually, was what the students called it when I went there. So I went there for 2 years, and then I went to Bruton Parker College, which is a Baptist college in kind of central Georgia. So, but I just couldn't deal with people with no common sense. So that's why I decided that a CPA would use more logical skills and more understanding of common people. That I would feel more comfortable doing that. So that's kind of a brief history. I worked for Farm Bureau. I did farmers taxes. I traveled around the state. The Farm Bureau office is in Macon, and I traveled the state, actually going to farmers' homes and preparing income taxes. So I did mostly bookkeeping and income taxes. And I know y'all kind of know what income taxes are. That's when your parents either are very happy because they get a refund from their taxes, or they're very sad because they owed money. So usually in March or April. So that's what I was doing. I was going around to farmers, and so I kind of cut my teeth, so to speak, on going around, and you had to be personable with people, and I enjoy that. I enjoy it face to face a lot better than I do this, but because it's hard to look at the crowd here, to me, a little bit harder than it would be normally. But so that's where I learned, and then I received my CPA. I passed the exam. It's 4 parts. I passed the exam, and I started working for a smaller firm in Macon, Georgia, and there were 3 partners there, and so I kind of worked with all of them. And so I learned a lot of my skills at Farm Bureau, kind of being thrown out and just doing taxes, and then I learned more of the skills of being organized in the process of a way a firm actually works when I went to work for the CPA firm. So then we moved back to Waycross, and I worked with Lewis and Rollison. So then I was in corporate accounting, and I worked for them for 3 or 4 years, and then I decided that I wanted to go out on my own, because if I was working hard for somebody else, I could work hard for myself and be able to do what I wanted to do in the way I wanted to do stuff. So that's why I moved into my CPA firm, and it's Western Company CPA on Plant Avenue. I just wanted to share with you guys some of the skills I think that it takes to be CPA. Critical thinking. You have to have very good organizational skills. You have to have a lot of listening skills. You have to have time management skills. You have to have the ability to adapt because things change often. And you have to have investigation skills, because you'll get letters from the IRS or other organizations telling you there's an error, or they think something's wrong, and you have to go back and investigate and find out whether they're right or they're wrong, and then you have to explain to them why you believe they're incorrect with their assessment. And then the last, most people will put this as the first, I kind of put this as the last, is math. Math is really important to be an accountant, but it's not necessarily the most major things. You have to be able to do kind of intermediate math stuff, algebra, a little bit of trig. But if you can count postage and do it correctly, you can pretty much handle the accounting part that has to do with math. And postage is kind of difficult if you actually start trying to figure it out. That's what I have the most trouble with my staff here, is when we get ready to mail some, to figure out how much postage they actually have to put on stuff. So math is important, but the other skills that you need are the critical thinking, organization, listening, time management, ability to adapt, and the investigation skills. Those are a lot more important than the math in reality. I wanted to kind of tell you all a little bit about what I do kind of on a normal basis. I keep people's accounting records, and most of y'all will hear the terminology of bookkeeping. Bookkeeping means that basically I keep up with, they send me their bank statements, and I keep up with categorizing all their expenses and all their income. So that's what I do kind of on a normal daily, monthly process. I also prepare business payroll, which has to do with payroll taxes, has to do with writing paychecks for companies. It has to do with figuring out their quarterly taxes and stuff that they have to pay in. It has to do with garnishments or bankruptcies and all these other things. Then I also prepare income taxes. Income taxes is usually a seasonal kind of thing that has to be done. Like I say, all your parents probably fuss about it in March or April. We do the income taxes, and we do IRS, and we do pretty much any state that has income taxes. We mostly do Georgia, but I do have clients that have multi-state tax returns, and so we have to do have to know a little bit about all the states' tax returns. I just wrote down a list of a lot of stuff that I do. Review IRS letters, resolve tax disputes, research tax law. I even help with immigration. I help with business licensing, and I also help with business formations. So it's not just income taxes. There's a lot of different things that I do in a normal CPA firm, because we're in a small community, and so businesses rely on their accountant, me or other accountants, to kind of help them with things they just don't understand. So it could be, as easy as, how do I get a business license at the city of Waycross? Or it could be something as complex as, I've got to show that I have this much income, so that my wife that I just married in India can come to the United States, and I have to show that I have this amount of income, and these are the forms I have to fill out. So I help with a lot of different, things like that. The next thing I kind of wanted to go into is kind of your education requirements for being a CPA. You have to have 150 credit hours in college, and the CPA, the accounting degree requires that you have 120. So you have to have 120, but you have to have a total hours. That's to get your degree. You have to have 120. But to get a CPA or sit for the CPA exam, you have to have 150. So that gives you the opportunity to do several different things, depending on the way you want to go. That's almost enough to go ahead and get your master's degree. So if you wanted to go ahead and do 5 years, you could get your master's degree, and that would give you your 150 hours. You could do a dual degree. So if you liked biology and accounting, you could do a biology degree and an accounting degree, just as long as you had enough of the classes required to get this, to sit for the CPA, the accounting stuff. So you can kind of mix it out. Some people just do, to get their 150 hours, they just do some extra electives that don't mean anything, or others think they don't mean anything. Like if you were interested in art, you could take a couple of art classes. You could take um, sociology or forensics or something, some other kind of classes. Those don't have to be in accounting. So it gives you the opportunity to broaden your skills, um, and that's a good thing for like your age group. You can always take classes at the college now while you're in high school, and that'll get some of your, I guess, what would you say, your basic classes like math, English, and history out of the way, so that you can still have a full load at college by taking some of these extra electives and not have it so hard, I guess, so hard going through the degree. Um, uh, the Let's see what I've got here. The good thing about a CPA compared to other, I guess, other certificates of professional certificates is there's reciprocity, which just means that if you get it in Georgia, you can transfer it to Florida. You usually have to take another ethics test or something like that, but you can transfer it to Florida or Alabama or Tennessee or New Mexico or Hawaii or Guam or Puerto Rico. I mean, it pretty much translates anywhere because the CPA, once you pass the exam and are a CPA, I wrote this down somewhere, there are 55 jurisdictions, states and jurisdictions within the United States that accept that. So that's pretty much pretty much everywhere, Washington, D.C., anywhere you can pretty much think of, and also internationally. Um, so if you moved overseas, they recognize the CPA exam because they know the stringent study and how much time it takes in even studying for the exam. It's a 4-part exam. So it takes 2 days to do the exam if you were to do all of it back to back. Some reasons why you might want to be a CPA, other than just being an accountant. Salaries, of course, are higher, anywhere from 5 to 15%. You have a stability. So even like in this time where we've had economic troubles, a lot of that extra paperwork that came along with all these businesses getting loans, or your family getting the extra stimulus money, they have to have filed a tax return, or they need somebody to help them fill out the paperwork. So I did a lot of work with businesses trying to get them these extra loans and this extra money they could get from the government. So the accounting profession has done well through any kind of economic time, so it's very stable. A CPA, being a CPA, you can make a difference in your community with the fact that you can share your knowledge with others. You can volunteer because if you have the credentials of a CPA, again, it goes back to that. You have the skills of being a critical thinker and being very organized. So if you have those skills, they translate very well into organizations that, nonprofit organizations. We also keep business running. CPAs keep business running, and we help businesses save money so that they can actually profit better. There are the professional opportunities with being a CPA. I wrote a very long list of this, and this is no way all of them. You can be a financial planner, you can be an IT consultant, you can be an environmental accountant, you can be a forensic accountant, and that has to do with being in the law where you go in as a professional expert on tax situations or the way somebody stole money or that kind of stuff, fraud. You can be go into tax law. A lot of people who are CPAs say that they want to go to law school, they'll get their CPA first, because once they pass the CPA exam, most of everybody I've ever talked to say that the bar exam is a lot easier than the CPA exam. So they feel once they've got the CPA exam under their belt, the law exam is not that hard. It's not as hard. Teaching, you could teach at the college level, high school level. You could be a business coach. You could own a CPA firm like I do. You could just be a better professional in being a business owner. You can go into governmental accounting, corporate accounting, auditing, foreign currency accounting. You could be a CFO at an organization. You go into cost accounting, like in a manufacturing setting. And then this is a lot of things for people as they either get older or as women have babies later in life, that it's a way that it's a profession that's needed, especially during that January through April time. So if you have the credentials, you can easily get hired um, for just that part of the year if you only wanted to work that part of the year. Um, I hire some people that I have a guy who works for me. He's 71 years old. He works 2 days a week. He works a good amount during tax season. So it's a way that even though your life changes from situation to situation, it still gives you an opportunity to work. I've even known of CPAs who basically work during tax season. They kind of don't work the rest of the year, or either they work remotely, and the fact that this is way back before remote working is a big thing like it is now, that they would get all the stuff shipped to them wherever they were at. So they'd go to Utah, and their office would just send them tax returns, and they would do the tax returns in Utah. If they wanted to move, the next month they wanted to be in Colorado to go ski, and they would have their tax returns sent to them in Colorado, and they would still work. So um, there's a very good opportunity for travel or moving from company to company, especially if you went to work for like a big firm that's international. You might be in New York for 2 years or 3 years, and you might be in California for 2 or 3 years. You might be in the Bahamas for 3 years. You might be in Israel for 7 years or 3 years or 4 years. You might be in Hong Kong. I mean, so there's an opportunity depending on what you choose to do. But I've chosen to be a CPA with a firm of my own so that I can have a nice balance of work and social, so that when my family needs me, I own the business so that I can say, well, we're going to go on a field trip with the school, so I'm going to take off that day and I can go. I can do that. My staff has a little bit of ability to decide whether they want to work, because like right now, we only work 4 days a week. So they get extra days off. They get long weekends. In tax season, we work hard and we work long. So we work more closer to 45 to 50 hours a week. So there's a lot of flexibility, and there's a lot of different opportunities with the accounting profession. That's pretty much all I have. There are four, I want to say there's four, what we call the 4 E's of accounting, which is education, exam, experience, and ethics. So ethics is another important thing and that's why we're trusted, because we're ethical people. I don't share Miss Carter's information with Conley, and I don't share Conley's information with Miss Carter. So um, it's a very admired profession. Most of the time, when they ask you a group of people who you trust the most, the accounting profession people usually come out, near to the top of the list. So I hope that I've not bored you to death, but I hope you get some information. Got some more information today, and I would hope that you would consider that. Consider being accounting. I do hire usually every year. I hire some work study students to come and work with me. So usually the prerequisite of it is I can't do anybody who's closely related to you, um, but I can always give you a tour. You can always come in, and I can kind of show you the process of what we actually do. And if it's something you're interested in, please pursue it. There are scholarships with education in Georgia for accounting. So I hope that I've shared some information with you that maybe helps you, or at least gives you more questions that you would want to know more about accounting.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, why didn't you stay in a bigger firm or another firm instead of starting your own?
Say that again.
Why did
I
you
said why didn't you stay in a bigger firm?
Well, when I was starting out, and I think this is still the case most of the time, is if you go to a big firm like this in Atlanta, they most of the time start you out with auditing, and if you do auditing, you're not home except for Sunday, and that's usually to wash your clothes so you can go out and leave again. So I was already married when I graduated from college, so to leave my spouse every week, and you usually do that for 2 years. It would have been kind of hard, or it would have been something that I wouldn't have enjoyed. But other people, if you're single when you graduate and you like traveling, auditing might be what you want to do. There are firms here locally that that don't do as much auditing, but they still do travel a good amount. Like I say, when I was with Farm Bureau during tax season, I was at a different house in Georgia every 2 hours. So I learned who cooked good and who I knew I wanted to go see when it was about lunchtime or who it was about supper time. I knew the people who would feed me so that I didn't have to stop and eat fast food all the time. So you just have to kind of do what in the accounting field. That's why I listed all the stuff all the possible jobs that you could do, because there's such a wide variety, and you really don't have to decide that. If you go into accounting, you really don't have to decide that until about your last quarter in school, because there's always job openings for an accountant. So, but that's why I didn't choose a bigger firm. I stayed with Macon was big enough. Macon was a big enough town for me to live in, so I didn't want to live in Atlanta. Some people would like to live in Atlanta. It was just not one of those places that I wanted to do, and I did not want to travel all the time. So that's why I didn't choose a big firm.
I have a question. Like, where did your business start out in bigger and small?
Yeah, when I started my own business, basically when we moved back to Waycross from Macon, I had 10 clients in Macon who didn't want to switch because they were with Farm Bureau, but I'd been doing their tax returns for 4 years, and they wanted to stay with me. So when I came to Waycross, I basically had 10 tax returns that I did, and I worked, like I said, I worked for Farm Bureau, and I did those, I worked for Lewis and Ross when I came back to Waycross, but I still did those 10 tax returns, and so I would do those on the weekends during tax season. And then I also I did some of the people who worked at Lewis and Ross while I worked there. And then when we decided that I kind of decided I was going to step out on my own and go to work. I was smart through my beginning of my career in the fact that I put money back, and so we had enough savings for me to not have any work basically for 6 months. So that gave me some time to start my business, and that gave me some time to build up some clients. So the first year that I was actually a company, which it was called Western Tax Service back then, when I first started my company, within the first 6 months, I picked up about 5 bookkeeping clients, so I had money coming in every month. And then there was a accountant retiring. His doctor basically told him he had a horse farm, that he could either keep the horses or keep the CPA firm running. So he chose the horses, and so he basically ended up giving me about 15 more clients. So and that gave me more monthly revenue, and that was probably within the first year. So at that point, it's just been a matter of picking up clients and word of mouth. I don't advertise really a lot, and I do a lot of small businesses around Waycross. The furthest client that I have the furthest away from Waycross that I have a client is that I do something for them every month is Jessup. I think's the furthest one. The furthest tax return that I do yearly was a lady who lived in. I didn't do her this past year, but it was a lady that I'd never met, and she lived in Fort Worth, Texas, because I did her doors, and so she just ended up mailing me her stuff too, and so I did her tax return. So geographics have nothing to do with what you could do, in a firm. So like I say, with the technology like we have like this, now I could just interview her over a Zoom meeting, and we could talk about all the questions, and it'd be even easier now than it was when I picked her up, 10 years ago. So my first business, when I first opened, when I was Western Company CPA, I was, when I was Western Tax Service, I was in a half of a mini mart, and so um, the convenience store was divided, and I had my business in half of it, and it was out toward a little bit toward Wearesboro from the center of Waycross. Oh, before that, when I first started, I built a room in my garage, and so that's where I worked out of for the first probably year. So just need a little space, and the skills that I laid out, and you shouldn't have any problems. I mean, everybody always needs an accountant for something. Anybody else have any questions?
Over there,
Oh, y'all are writing them down?
the big four.
Yeah.
You answered Thomas.
Oh, the big four. Yeah, the big four. You're probably going to do auditing if you go with the big four. That's probably where they're going to put you. And if they don't wear you out to get you to leave, then you're set. Those kind of thing. It's the big four are. When I was starting out, it was actually the big eight. So it's the major super accounting firms. I guess internationally now. There used to be 8, and now I think there's only 4. That's what they are asking the big 4. So that number kind of changed once in a while. Sometimes they'll split off, and it'll be the big 5 next year. Because 3 partners will leave, and they'll take some clients with them and start. But I was never really interested in that because the people I know that live in Atlanta, that work in Atlanta, they do make more than me. Of course, it costs more to live in Atlanta. But they commute an hour and a half both ways. So during tax season, they get there at 6 o'clock in the morning, they leave at 8 o'clock at night, and they've got an hour and a half commute both ways. So you figure out the time, and there's not a lot of socializing. They're just going home and sleeping. That's pretty much what you do.
Compare that to your hours.
Comparing that to my hours. I work usually during tax season. I come in at 8 o'clock. I work till about 7. I usually go home for lunch so that I can get away from here. But you couldn't do that in Atlanta. You kind of be stuck. You kind of be stuck there in traffic for your hour for lunch. And then I come back, and then I work, and I go home usually 6 or 7, and then I work a half a day on Friday, and a half a day on Saturday, and then usually 2 Sundays during tax season I work just to get stuff caught up. And that's usually near deadlines, like near April 15th or near March 15th.
And then what about not tax season?
Not in tax season, I work from 8 to 5. I have kind of a normal schedule. Being the boss does have its advantages. Like today, I needed to go to Lowe's, so I went to Lowe's during lunch, so my lunch was more like an hour and a half. But at a smaller CPA firm, you have flexibility. Like the people here that work for me know me, and if they call me and say, I got a doctor's appointment at 2, it's not a big deal. They go at 2. There's somebody here we just need to make sure there's somebody here all the time during our business hours, so clients can come in and talk to us. But I chose it because it gives me the flexibility of family and recreation, and that's kind of why I chose a smaller town. And there are firms for sale all over the country, everywhere. I get a newsletter every month, and I look, and there's one in Fort Lauderdale right now for $300,000 if anybody's ready to go for that. So there's one in Miami. I think that one was like $600,000. So I'm just looking at places that I would like if I was moving from Waycross where I would go. But so those are the ones. There's one in Atlanta, outside Atlanta, that I think was a couple of $100,000 firm for sale. So that doesn't include the property. That's only the firm. So the expense would be there. But yeah, there are accounting firms always looking for somebody. Like I say, I always hire somebody to work extra during tax season. students, and I usually hire somebody else that they can actually do tax returns, and I'll hire some of them during tax season. So there's always there's always need. There's always a need.
Does anybody else have a question?
If not, I do want to mention another thing. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. I think I might have skipped it. With the critical thinking, technology and accounting is one of the places where usually technology hits first. That doesn't mean you have to know all the technology. When I started out, what we call electronic filing is where you don't have to send in paper to the IRS. You just do it through the computer. I came along when that was just coming into effect, and so the firm I worked at in Macon had never done an electronic tax return, and so me and one of the other guys there said, well, we want to learn how to do it. So we took it upon ourselves to learn how to do it. We've been working there probably a year, and the partner said, sure, go ahead. We said, well, it costs $5 per return to do it. The partner's like, but just do it and tell us how it works. So that year we did 2 electronically filed tax returns. The next year we did 50 to 60% of our clients were all electronically filed, and me and the other guy were the ones responsible for making sure they got done. So we added more work, but we really added less work because then we didn't have to print out tax returns and staple them together and do stuff. We could print out a copy for the client, and we could do it electronically. So we saved time, but we learned additional skills that helped our firm. So when bonuses came around, and when raises came around, we were looked at favorably because we were willing to keep pushing the firm forward. So technology, the skills that you know now, and the skills that you'll learn over the next few years, the partners at the firms that you go to work for are going to be older like me, and they're going to be stretching to learn some of this stuff, and some of it you're just going to be able to jump in and kind of know how to do it and know how to integrate it. Between them and you'll learn how to integrate that into the firm, and that will make you more valuable.
Okay, I have one more question. What kind of duties does your student worker have?
My student worker, which Lydia does do some of it, but she hadn't been coming in the last couple of weeks. But my student worker, they scan returns. They make sure that I signed all the returns. They put the returns together to be mailed out to clients. They file stuff like paper files, like the normal filing system stuff that you would want to do. And we also do documents that are scanned. We then file them into a client's file that's a computerized file. So they learn they learn a good amount about what actually goes on in the firm. They deal with clients. They answer the phone. They don't answer questions, but they get questions. And so they have to kind of understand enough to know what is important. And I do a lot of clients that have accents. I have a few Indian clients. I have a few Pakistani clients. I have a few, what else do I have? I have a few British clients. And so you just have to get used to different people's accents and know and kind of listen hard enough to understand what they're actually asking you, maybe not what they're saying. And so sometimes that's why I say listening is a very important skill in being an accountant.
Mm-hmm. You have to file stuff so many times because you file it electronically, and you file some stuff in one filing cabinet, and you file it in another filing cabinet, and then you put it in alphabetical order in another one. So much.
Well, like the old-timey firms would have 50 or 60 filing cabinets. I have probably 4. Yeah. So, and in those 4 filing cabinets, I do have some I'll show you some old stuff I got. This is my archives, which this is probably about 10 years worth of stuff. So I don't keep a lot because I've got it. I only keep kind of the essential stuff. The rest of the stuff is electronically stored, so I can retrieve it pretty quick.
And we've got another question from Bella. How old do you have to be to be a student worker?
You have to be I guess you have to be able to qualify for the what's it? What's the home study, the work study thing that they do through the school? I don't know what it's called. What it's called?
Work-based learning.
Work-based learning. When you're old enough, or when you have enough credits that you can do work-based learning, then you can do it. I mean, like Lydia doesn't necessarily do work-based learning, but she's my daughter, so she works. So you know, you could work for a CPA firm, or you could be a student worker at a CPA firm, without having the work-based learning. You just have to be old enough to, actually to work. So you'd have to be, unless it was your parent, you'd have to be 16. I think 15 if you get your parent to sign something to say that you can work. So,
it's usually, it's like you can like drive to your job, because like the work-based learning, that's like one of your blocks at school. So you have to be able to like drive to your job and then like drive back to school. And then
in work-based learning, you have to be in 11th grade. So 11th graders and 12th graders can do it.
Because those can drive. Yeah.
And you don't necessarily have to be driving, but have definitely transportation to get to and from. And it can take up to 2 blocks of your day.
Like right now, I have a student that does work-based learning, and she's on the rifle team. So she only can work. She has the last block of school is her block, and she does work-based learning. So she comes here and works, and then she leaves here enough time to get to rifle practice. And they do rifle practice pretty much all year. So, so she's leaving here to be there back at school at 3:30 every day she works. During the summer, she's a little more flexible because I still do try to work. Some of my student workers still work them in the summer, but then if her schedule changes next and she gets next quarter and she gets first block, she'll be here at 8:30 in the morning and work till I guess whenever the second block starts. But and that's what most places that'll work those students for that are CPA firms. They're going to be a little more flexible than your fast food or that kind of stuff. And I'm not open on Saturday, so that's usually a good thing for kids to want to, work-based learning students to want to work at a place that they don't have to work on the weekends. So I usually do get 4 or 5 kids that come out when I have an opening. So and it's always hard to choose because they're always good kids. So
but you have to make sure they're trustworthy.
Yeah, but basically the thing is you're going to keep confidential, and if you see your Uncle Sam's tax return or your Aunt Jane's tax return, that you don't ever say anything about it. And that's usually for a student worker in a CPA firm. That's usually the most important thing is that you're not going to say, "Wow, they make a lot more than I thought," or "Wow, they make a lot less than I thought, but they have nice things." That kind of stuff. You just can't share that information that you might happen to see at a CPA firm. So I mean, that's the most important, I guess, thing. Any of the skills you can be taught. I mean, really. So.
Yeah, I came in here not knowing like anything, and I was taught like how to scan, how to like file like electronically, and also like where to file the different parts.
My oldest daughter, when she was in 11th grade, I had somebody out, and she had to do 3 payrolls for me. So, I taught her how to do it on the first one, and the second 2 she kind of did by herself. So, all of it can be learned. The schooling part, when you go to college, is basically to press you to make sure that you use all the skills, the critical thinking, the organization, the time management, the ability to adapt, because professors will change things on you, just because they know that tax laws are going to keep changing, and they know that state and federal regulations are going to change. So they'll halfway through the class, they may change and say, "Oh, we're not dealing with 2014 tax returns anymore. Now we're doing 2016s." So you got to be able to switch your brain real quick and say, "Okay, what was the law then, and not what was the law then?" And that was one of the things that kind of keeps you on your toes, doing that kind of stuff. But you don't just take tax when you go to school. You take forensic accounting, you take ethics, you take cost accounting. In fact, when I was in college, tax accounting was my worst class. It's the one I hated the worst. But it's what I liked doing when I got, when I actually started working. So,
I started out as an accounting major, and when I got to auditing, I changed majors. I actually took logistics as like an extracurricular or extra elective, and that's when I fell in love with logistics. And so I changed because auditing was a lot.
yeah, auditing was a lot. Some of the terms in auditing you don't use anywhere else in your life, and so you just got to learn these stupid words that you're like going, that just sounds weird. Wow, you got attest. I can't even say it. Attest procedures and stuff that you're like going, what does that even mean? So there's a lot of weird terminology in auditing that you have to use. But if any of y'all go into accounting, contact me because I can get you basically with one word. I can get you through your first 2 accounting classes, and if you just know that word and knows what it means, you'll understand everything in your first 2 accounting classes. So yeah, there's a lot of little tricks that tricks you can you understand it quicker and you understand it a little bit better. But,
thank you so much for your time.
Sure.
We appreciate it so much.
Sure. And if any of y'all ever just want to walk through, come through and look and see, it looks just like an office. But if y'all ever want to do that, just kind of let me know. Contact Lydia. Let Lydia know, and let me know when you want to come, and we'll try to set that up. So y'all at least walk through and see the different things that are here. Like I say, when it's your own business, I get state-of-the-art technology from 3 years ago. So, but it all works. So